Okay, so hello and welcome back to our review of the Austrian Grand Prix. And I'm joined by ARITRA to discuss what was definitely the best race season so far, in my opinion. One of the best races I've seen for a long time.
Yeah, and I mean, I have to agree with you on that. And like, this was so much better than Bahrain because even though there was a small scare post race, but then there was no heartbreak for the deserved.
Exactly, absolutely. It was a little bit scared. I'm sure we'll kind of let's dive straight on that then. We've got the race winning move, Max Verstappen overtaking Charles Leclerc. I've got to say, I'll leave it. What was your take on it first?
I mean, I never thought it was a penalty in a million years, to be honest, because I really think Max's move was the pass itself was clean, and if you look at the replays carefully, it was actually, I believe, it was actually Leclerc who turned into Max and bounced off the track.
Yeah, that's the thing. When you're on the outside, it's kind of your job to kind of. I feel like people are kind of saying it's on Max to give him space. When I'm not so sure it is. Verstappen has, he's steaming along. He's come alongside him, and it does actually pull out ahead of Charles. And I feel like it's on Leclerc to kind of recognise that he has to yield the corner there. But
I mean,
there's
yeah,
nowhere he
that's
can
that's
go.
yeah, that's exactly what Martin Brundle said post race. Like a racing driver needs to realize when the corner is beyond him and give up the corner rather than giving it everything and just not giving up on the corner because it will lead to disasters. And that is what exactly happened. And Max had the inside line, so I'm not really sure how he's supposed to give more space.
So Max has the inside line. Max pulls out alongside and ahead, so he has the right to that racing line. And if you watch all the replays, Max is completely steering round the corner all the way. That he never like turns back into Leclerc or even looks at where Leclerc is. Max just takes that corner,
Yeah, exactly.
and it's one of the things where if that's the street circuit, or if there's barrier there, it's like a massive bit of asphalt, or even if there's a gravel trap there, like Leclerc pulls out of that move, tucks in behind, but because obviously it's an easy runoff, clear runoff, Leclerc feels like Leclerc keeps himself in there when he really had no right to do that.
Yeah, and to be honest, I was disappointed with Leclerc's, you know, some of the comments that he made post race.
Yeah, I mean, if that's, I understand. I guess mostly, any driver that loses like that is going to look for something to blame. But like, if he genuinely looks back at that and still has that opinion, then I would find that hard to believe. If he, looks at the end of the season or even next race, if he just looks back on that and still genuinely believes Max should have got a penalty, then I would really be asking questions. Because like, if you're going to say that's not allowed, that move for Max, then the only moves we're going to allow in Formula One now are DRS passes down the straight. That
Yeah,
that is
yeah,
the only
exactly.
that's the only overtaking we're ever going to allow if you seriously say that's a penalty, and that's kind of basically the effect of what Matteo Bonotto was getting as well. They interviewed him on Sky. Bonotto was like, "Yeah, I agree that the rules need changing, but the way the rules are written right now, we've got like a shut and dry case. Like we should Leclerc is going to win this race," and he was like so confident. Like he could not be persuaded that the way the rules are written, we're going to win this. He was so convinced, which
Oh man,
I was shocked about.
Ferrari and their overconfidence just never gets old.
Absolutely.
No, but then I would like to point out a couple of instances in the race where my heart skipped a beat. Uh, right at the start, when Max lost 6 places before turn one, which was crazy, and like my heart literally sank because you got your first front row start of the season, and that's what happens to you before turn one. And
Yeah.
and another time when my heart literally was in my mouth was when Max was like cutting down Valtteri, and he said came onto the radio and said, "I am losing power."
Yeah, there was kind of absolutely kind of hype mouth moments there, and the whole Max thing. It was strange. 'Cause I remember sending you a message on WhatsApp, being like, "Oh, I'm so worried about this race because this has been F1 this season. It promises so much, and we had Leclerc and Verstappen, future world champions. I'm sure there's going to be many championship battles between the two of them." I was like, something's going to go wrong. They're either going to
Yeah,
crash or one of their cars are going to give up, and I was like, oh. I didn't want to be right. So obviously, yeah, Max going trying to stall, but yeah, the way he kind of just stormed through the field was really, really exciting to watch. And yeah, but it was kind of strange because he was saying he was losing power. He dropped maybe like from 4 tenths back to Valtteri from 6 tenths, but kind of immediately recovered it. But I think that would have been so awful if Max had, because he was just building at that point. He'd gone past Vettel when he was flying, and people. I was starting to think to myself, you know what, he could do this. There's a lot of laps left. He keeps up this pace. Charles not out of reach. I was just starting to get excited. I was like, oh no, no, please, please don't tell me it's all just going to end. Max is just going to retire, and we
Yeah,
just finish like
and
this.
like losing power when you're in a great situation is such a Red Bull thing.
No, absolutely. I was going to say like this. We've not seen it a lot from Red Bull. Not since the switch to Honda. And I was like, no, please, let's not go back to those days.
No, I mean, I just want to make a point here. A lot of people, after Canada said that we had such a great race between the two beasts of the sport, 9 world championships between them, and we had such a great scrap between the two. I mean, 0 world championships between them and an average age of 21 and a half years. How about that?
Yeah, that's the thing. You're going to feel like that's not for the first time, certainly not for the last time. Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc are going to go head to head, and yeah, it was great to see because I'm sure there's many world championships in their future. So it was I see they made one of the youngest podiums, and Valtteri Bottas isn't an overly young man, so for it to still be the youngest podium, it's going to say it just shows how much F1's moved on in
Well,
these.
I mean, like this has to be one of the youngest podiums in the hybrid era, at least, because Hamilton is older than Valtteri, and Hamilton is almost always there on the podium.
Just wonder, I think it's Formula One's youngest ever podium, so it's certainly in the hybrid era. Yeah, Hamilton, and that's another interesting thing. Hamilton not even on the podium at all, but today was the day of Max Verstappen and certainly Charles. And I'll say, Leclerc drove an impressive race. We thought like Leclerc was the way he got off the line and the way he was just coasting away from Valtteri. He looked comfortable really, as everybody was just settling into that racing period where the degradation was building on their tyres. We just thought everyone was settling in, going to finish where they were, and then all of a sudden Max made the benefit of his tyres. He had 10-lap fresher tyres than all the
Yeah.
cars in front of him, so he just kind of put his foot down and made the move. And when it came to it, they fought hard, but there was nothing Charles could really do. You saw because even Charles dropped to like more than 3 seconds, so nearly 3 seconds behind Max when he made that move.
Yeah. I mean, there was no stopping Max today, ever since turn one on the first lap. To be honest, as I said, because I mean, you could literally see him cutting every driver down to size, bit by bit, every lap, lap after lap. I mean, every lap he was at least 3 to 4 tenths quicker than the driver in front of him.
It was, there's always a bit of luck involved, kind of where you meet traffic, but everything just seemed to be working out for Max to win. The way that Leclerc would catch a bit of traffic, maybe in a corner or something, but Max always came to the traffic on the straight, sped past the DRS, and the way that it's like every
Yeah.
single lap he made inroads on the cars in front of him. And that's when when he flew past Vettel, like when there wasn't even a challenge, and that's when you started to think, we really could have something on there. And I maybe didn't believe he could go and get close enough to Leclerc and overtake him, and then actually pull away. But I was like, you kind of got that sense that something special was going to happen. But he came, as I say, he came from so far back. That the start he had to come from win just shows how much pace he had. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, you look at his times. Valtteri nearly 19 seconds off him. Vettel 20. Hamilton 23. And you think Verstappen had that start. Yeah, he managed to make up almost a pit stop on most of his other rivals.
Yeah, I mean, I was about to say that, but he did get the fastest lap. But then, in case he did not have the fastest lap and there was 1 lap remaining, he could have actually pitted and still won the race.
Exactly. Like I was just on the fastest lap. So I just wanted to say that when Vettel pitted kind of late towards the race, he put on a soft tyre, and so I'm sure Vettel was expecting to take the fastest lap, but that just shows how much pace Max had. That on the medium
on,
tyres.
I think Max had the hard tire on.
Sorry, yeah, so he did. So on the hard tyres, kind of like about 20 or so laps in, Max was still pumping in those times, and Vettel on new softs couldn't match those tyres. He was like a man possessed, and obviously it's his second win in a row at the Red Bull Ring. Second Red Bull, second home win in a row for Red Bull. So they'll be absolutely delighted with that.
I mean, but then looking at the other side of the garage, I mean, that car had serious race pace today. I mean, nobody can deny that. And Gasly was on the tail of Max on the first lap, and throughout the first lap, he was in his slipstream. But then what happened to him?
I know, like I think the Red Bull isn't. It's obviously not. It's obviously not the quickest car. It's not the quickest car on the grid. Full stop. I mean, there's races where Red Bull look good and they have pace, and Max will get every single ounce out of that car like he did today. Like Max will just get any bit of performance and more out of the car, but Gasly just cannot get any performance out of the car. The way that you just saw him, in the middle of the race, just getting stuck behind Kimi Räikkönen, not being able to make the overtake. You're sitting there watching Verstappen carve through Hamilton, Vettel, Leclerc, and you're sitting there watching Pierre Gasly in the exact same car, really struggling to get past Kimi Räikkönen and in an Alfa Romeo, and actually not being able to catch Lando Norris, and that seeing Carlos Sainz, making a charge towards the end of the race for Gasly. He didn't make it in the end, but he was coming at Gasly. Gasly was more in. Gasly was looking behind more than he was looking at Lando's in front. So
Yeah, exactly. I think you hit the nail on the head with that. Because, I mean, he just looks like a Toro Rosso driver driving in a Red Bull livery. It's,
exactly, it's oh, yeah. So and the other thing yet to say, I don't know if you've already said it, but he got lapped by his teammate, and he actually when Max dropped down the field at the start, Pierre Gasly actually got ahead of him, but then finished
yeah.
lapped in the same. I think that's one of the worst things that can happen to you as a driver. You've had
No,
no issues, and your
I
teammate in
mean,
the same car has lapped you.
yeah, no, I mean, to that, some people might say, some people, I'm not saying everybody, but some people might say that, yeah, Max is great. Max is probably the best driver, so it's not fair. It's not a fair comparison. But then if you look at Carlos Sainz started from the back of the grid and he almost got Gasly.
Is that Carlos Sainz? I'd take engine penalties, and the McLaren has pace, but the McLaren doesn't have Red Bull pace. The Red Bull won the race today. McLaren should be nowhere near that, and the McLaren pace-wise is nowhere near that. But I think Gasly is, dragging that car down so much, and even then, to say it's unfair. I mean, it is unfair maybe to compare the results of Verstappen and Gasly in the sense that I fully expected Max to finish ahead of Pierre in the championship this season, but I didn't expect Pierre to have 43 points this season. Carlos Sainz has 30 points, Pierre Gasly has 43. And Max
And
Verstappen has
Max has three
128.
times, almost three times the points that Gasly has.
Exactly, like Max Verstappen, I had expected to have more points in Gasly, fine, and I accept that. But Pierre Gasly doesn't have a Red Bull driver's amount of points. It's absolutely crazy how little points he have, and it's bordering on embarrassing really for Pierre to be having, and Max is showing him up in that sense. That, Max is showing that this car does have race winning pace on its day in it, and certainly podiums, and Pierre is just not even, routinely now. I mean, there was a period where he was starting to pick up a few sick plays, and we were like, okay, this isn't
Yeah.
great, but it's progress. But he's now settled into another pattern where he's just routinely finishing behind the McLarens, and he just can't keep the max at pace. I think it's not like like we can't sit here and say Lando Norris, great defensive drive. Lando was parking it on the apexes. Gasly just couldn't get by. You know, this was a track where you could overtake. There's three DRS zones. The track where you could overtake, and Pierre just wasn't on Lando's tail. He wasn't. I'm sure Lando was never particularly worried by Gasly in behind. It was, yeah. So he's
It was sad.
another race.
I'm starting to feel bad for Gasly now. I mean, just to make a point, as I said, that Max Verstappen almost has three times the points that Gasly has right now. So Hamilton has 197 points. If Bottas had 67 points right now, we would all be almost like physically picking Esteban Ocon up and drafting him into the seat.
Exactly, they would be, and we talked about this last week. I'm sure you can go listen to that in the way that I said that I feel like Gasly is clinging on because of the fact that there's no future world champion, jumping out from Toro Rosso like there has been in recent years. But obviously, it's getting to the point where you think, even if they go Kvyat or Albon, are they going to do any worse?
No,
Realistically, no.
surely not. Surely
That's
not, because
it.
because Kvyat on occasions has challenged the McLarens in a Toro Rosso, but then yeah, Gasly did so last year as well.
Yeah, and it's just annoying as well, like from a fan's perspective. Obviously, we all know there's politics in F1 and how you manoeuvre to get seats and that, and not always. The theory of F1 is the best 20 drivers in the best 20 cars. Obviously, in reality, it's not the best 20 drivers. But when you see, talented drivers like Esteban Ocon who, for one reason or another couldn't get a seat, and you see people like Pierre Gasly in a top seat
Yeah.
perform the way he is, it's just so frustrating to watch. And lots of drivers like like your Nico Hulkenberg, your Sergio Perez's. They really really strong drives and have spent all their careers in the midfield. They would what they would give for a chance to be in a top team. And when you see someone in the top team which is putting in such embarrassing performances like Pierre Gasly is, then it is a bit frustrating.
Yeah, no, I mean, so we've talked enough about Gasly, to be honest. It was stretched too long. But then, yeah, coming to the man who finished fifth, where was your guy today?
Yeah, my man Lewis. No, yeah, it was off day. I mean, obviously, it was not. I say off day, it was off weekend, really, wasn't it? Came second in qualifying, but he knew he was going to take that free place penalty, and yeah, I think it was more McLaren. Not McLaren. Those were the days. That was a long time ago. Where have I been? No, Mercedes. Obviously, I just think it was a track issue, wasn't it? They couldn't. They were always struggling with overheating, and they just had no. I said no real pace today, did they? It was one of the first weekends of the season where they've just not really been a factor in the race at all. And it was the same for Bottas, obviously, but Bottas managed to perform better. Lewis Hamilton, I think, was hampered by the fact he kind of got a little crack on his front wing, had to make that stop, and that kind of put him out of
Yeah.
contention, really. And then with what the Mercedes had, there was nothing really he could do. He just couldn't catch Sebastian, and when Sebastian put the fresh tyres on, you always kind of knew that was going to happen. Maybe I was half of me was thinking, hoping Sebastian hadn't got enough time to overtake him, but deep down I kind of knew. I was like, yeah, this is going to get done, isn't it? And I
Yeah,
think two
and
laps to go, he got him.
I mean, I just love the fact that I have seen nobody mention the fact that Sebastian actually beat Lewis in this race.
I think that's kind of a testament to how far ahead Mercedes been, and probably like a criticism of Ferrari that just didn't occur to him, did it? It seems like no one's even talking about this Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel, which has kind of propelled F1 for the last 2 years. Because the way kind of people like to envisage F1 at the top, and we always like to, is like a big rivalry. We had the Hamilton Rosberg era, then we moved into the Lewis Sebastian era, and Ferrari have been so poor and Mercedes been so far ahead that at the end of the day, Sebastian Vettel making up 2 points on Lewis Hamilton has still left. The scores are still 197 to 123. It's like that's
Uh,
just how dominant Mercedes have been.
yeah,
It's just not a factor, is it?
yeah. I mean, talking about the championship, like the gap to the championship leader is a little less now, so that's good news for us.
It is slightly less, and I'm not saying it's panic staging by any means for Mercedes, but there's been a couple of races in a row now where they've not entirely looked at their best.
Yeah.
Other teams are getting closer to them. So,
Yeah,
you've
I
got
would say that they look vulnerable right now.
yeah, they do. Because I mean, if we go back to the last couple of races, you've got Monaco where Lewis has been hounded all the way by Verstappen with a penalty, and obviously the only reason Mercedes won that is because of the nature of Monaco.
Yeah.
They actually made a horrible strategy call, but they were bailed out by the fact you got to take at Monaco. You know, Hamilton didn't cross the line first in Canada, and we're not going to talk about the penalty, but Hamilton didn't cross the line first in Canada. And then you've got
France.
France. You
Yeah.
know, they did do well in France. You can't really say bad word about France. But then in this race, they were nowhere today. So that's 3 out of 4 races where, things could have gone differently, and they weren't the team. What they weren't, the dominant team they have been recently. So there's, the other teams are starting to come back at Mercedes now.
Yeah, and I hope the other teams can make a bigger step than they have so far. Yeah, we would like that. We would like a real challenge in our hands, even though many people believe that it's already over. But then I have I mean, especially after this race, I have a feeling that it's not quite over.
It's not quite over. I mean, yeah, it's kind of it's hard to say because obviously the obvious threat. Ferrari seem to be more consistently there or thereabouts challenging Mercedes. You know what I mean? But like, there's no one person like. So Ferrari are consistently maybe finishing third behind Mercedes, but it's normally a different car. Sometimes it's Vettel, sometimes it's Leclerc.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas Red Bull haven't shown consistent pace to match even Ferrari at times. It's like Red Bull are kind of we're great here. Yeah, we're quite good here. We're quite good here, but we're not race winning here. So it's like kind of like 1 in 5 Red Bull will look to have race winning pace. So I'm not sure
Yeah.
Max can do it. Then I'm not sure Ferrari are going to find one driver to do it. So maybe we're going to see different people chipping away, and I think the thing that's going to help
Yeah.
Hamilton is not one person is going to stand forward and say, so far anyway, it looks like there's not one single person who's going to step forward and say, right, I'm going to close this gap to Hamilton. I'm going to step forward and do it. And I think that's the good thing from Hamilton's perspective. Obviously, Valtteri still remains the closest, but Valtteri has not been able to challenge him as much, and we've
Yeah, and I mean, like, the thing is, everybody was waiting for Ferrari to break Mercedes' streak, and then it ended up being Red Bull who did the job. But then, back when we were in SoundCloud, I don't know if you remember this. I said that every time Mercedes doesn't win, Red Bull sort of comes out of nowhere and spoils Ferrari's party.
yeah, no, I do remember you saying that, and obviously it's absolutely wrong true, and obviously that's one of the things. The last time Mercedes didn't win, also it was a Red Bull, and it was Max Verstappen in Mexico. So
The same man.
exactly the same man. So yeah, Five had a long wait for their last win of theirs, and yeah, it's actually come to fruition again. The tracks where Mercedes doesn't have pace, Red Bull just absolutely smashed it.
Yeah, so since we've talked about the top five, and yes, the top five, Gasly finished P7.
Mm.
I am not counting him in the top six. So the man who finished sixth, a really positive result, and another storming weekend for McLaren.
Yeah,
Sixth and eighth, solid haul of points. They look good for fourth right now.
very solid haul of points. And say they are looking like the standout midfield team at the moment. They are pulling away from the rest, and I'm really really happy for Lando. Because obviously, he still came home with a ninth place position, but I felt really sorry for him in the last race. So I'm happy to see him
Yeah.
up with help to get sixth this time. Obviously another great qualifying for him as well. A great start as well. I mean, I loved the start when he kind of flew past Hamilton at the first corner. I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. It was great. It was one of my it was only a small one, but one of my just highlights of the season. Seeing Lando Norris have the audacity to take Hamilton on the first lap and fight him all the way down the straight. It's brilliant. You knew it wasn't going to last, but it was just brilliant to see a young driver take on one of his what would have been one of his a young British driver growing up would have been his heroes would have been Lewis Hamilton. So you just
Yeah.
see him
Mhm.
kind of not being scared to take him on as well. Because Lando knows that he's not going to stay ahead of him, but he's like, what, I'm up here. I'm going to fight this Mercedes all the way, and it was great to see him take on the challenge.
Yeah, no, I mean, McLaren this season have been gutsy at every single race. Like we were mentioning Carlos Sainz going after Max Verstappen in the last race in France, Lando going after Lewis in this race, and then you had Sainz going after Verstappen in Bahrain as well.
Yeah. I think McLaren have a really, really strong driver lineup, and I know that is true of a lot of teams. So it is maybe it is a little bit of a hollow thing. So they've got a great driver lineup, but they really do. I mean, Carlos Sainz, if things had worked out differently, if his timing wasn't the best. I'm sure what Toro Rosso would give to have somebody of Carlos Sainz's ability in their car now. He would definitely get the move up. Obviously, Carlo was at the time of Max, and Max was just so exceptional, and two seats weren't going to open up. So, they've got him, and Lando Norris is like a real, talent of the future as well. So they've got a late lineup, and like Carlos was saying after the race, well, that they brought an upgrade package to Spain, and maybe the track dynamics of Monaco and Canada didn't suit them, so they weren't able to get the most out of it. But now they've moved into the France and Austria, they've really managed to unlock it, and they seem really kind of at home with the car and the pace, and they seem to have kind of made all their upgrades work now. And if you look at the constructors table, they're now pulling away. They're now 20 points clear of Renault.
Oh shit. No, yeah, I mean, really glad for McLaren. Two back-to-back good weekends in a row. Coming to the team who had their first double points of the of the season, and the driver who scored his first points in his F1 career, Antonio Giovinazzi finally getting his big break in 10th place. Kimi Raikkonen, solid as ever, did overtake Max at the start, but then yeah, finished the race in 9th place, scoring 2 points. Yeah, good, solid weekend for Alpha.
Yeah, I mean, Kimi was everyone had a great start, didn't he? So you were talking about Lando's great start overtaking Hamilton, but almost as soon as Hamilton overtook Lando also lost the place to Kimi, kind of almost at the same time. So yeah, Kimi had a
Yeah,
great start. He was sitting in fourth for a while, and honestly, I'm not sure they kind of got the tyres to switch on, and I think kind of they worked through their tyres a little bit more than the McLaren. I don't think the Alpha was as kind to its tyres, which meant it dropped back, but a strong weekend for Alpha, another point scoring position for Kimi Raikkonen. Yeah, Kimi Raikkonen, we know what to expect. We know he's going to get the most out of a car you give him. We know the experience he has. But yeah, for someone like Giovinazzi to again put in such a strong qualifier, ended up starting seventh on the group because of penalties and whatnot, but again got into the top 10 shootout, which for an Alfa Romeo for Giovinazzi, that's really, really impressive work. And this time he managed to hold on to it, and I am actually really happy for him. He's got a point.
yeah,
The
and
way he's driven,
I
he really
mean,
deserved it the last 2 weekends. He deserves at least a point.
yeah, and I am so glad he's not going the Gasly way.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's good to see that you don't like to see, kind of drivers struggling. And I feel for the guy because, he's always going to be outshone in his team because Kimi Raikkonen is just, such an experienced driver, world champion, and him a relative rookie should call him. So
Yeah,
it's not his debut season, but he's only had like two races in like a really, really off the pace Sauber from a couple of years ago. So in effect, he's still kind of getting to grips with F1, and the midfield battle is such a dogfight, and Alfa Romeo are kind of on the, they're not one of the stronger midfield teams in that sense. They're not like a McLaren or a Renault who've clearly got the car for it. So yeah, it's really good. It's absolute dogfight to get into those points paying positions, and it's been tough for him. But yeah, Giovinazzi's made that move. I mean, that's one of the kind of things where now he's done it once, that'll give him more confidence. He can go on and do it again.
indeed. And since we've talked about the point scorers, we now move to the people who finished the race. Oh, by the way, every single car finished the race.
Yeah, yeah, very good. Good to see. Yeah, don't often see that. Yeah, that was a kind of
Yeah,
surprising
that's.
element of it.
I mean, this is the first time in a long time I think we've seen zero retirements in a race.
Absolutely. I'm glad Max wasn't one of them. I'm sure it was a real possibility at one point.
We had our fingers crossed at that. Anyway, so Sergio Perez in 11th place, Daniel Ricciardo in 12th, Nico Hulkenberg in 13th, Lance Stroll in 14th. Disappointing weekend for all four cars. I mean, both the teams, to be honest.
Yeah, some of the weekends like pretty anonymous weekends, really. I mean, I'm sure if we cast our minds back to the TV coverage, don't really remember seeing any of the four of them. But Ricardo tried some. Tell a lie. I say Ricardo. They tried something different, didn't they? They kept Ricardo out, for a really, really long time and tried the
Yeah,
overcut on everyone, and they didn't really work out, did it? Really, he ended up finishing where he qualified. So Kind of
Mm-hmm.
disappointed weekend for Renault. So, and we talk about they're starting to lose ground to McLaren now. McLaren have just found a new level, and Renault haven't really caught up with that so far.
It's disappointing because Renault have so far this season sort of been hot and cold, like on and off. One season they're great, like they look best of the rest by a mile, and then they end up in the next weekend not getting any points.
I think, yeah, and the important comparison I think to make with Renault and McLaren is that McLaren have now had 2 weekends in a row where they've qualified brilliantly and they've actually gone and converted it to big points in the race.
Yeah.
Whereas we've seen earlier in the season when Renault had their strong weekends, they haven't converted those. We've seen them retire from point to point positions with engine trouble. We've seen their drivers kind of make mistakes. We've seen issues kind of affect Renault. So when they've looked strong, they've not taken the points they should have done. Whereas now McLaren are coming up strong, they've this weekend they've absolutely maximised the points, and they did a very similar thing in in France. And obviously, I think a Renault driver was one of the main reasons they didn't get the points they should have done. I still feel Lando would have nursed his injured car home if Ricardo hadn't have basically bumped him off the track. So, McLaren
They
have,
still hung up on that.
yeah, I'm still not happy, still not happy. Yeah, but
Yeah, yeah, no, I don't blame you.
McLaren have maximised and Renault haven't.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. So the man who started from the pit lane, Alexander Albon in 15th, Romain Grosjean in 16th, Daniel Kvyat in 17th, George Russell ahead of Kevin Magnussen. Magnussen was so good yesterday that I actually was really happy for him. And I think everybody was glad that P5, it's not an easy job. And then he took a penalty for the race, started 10th, and then he was nowhere again. And both the Haas cars, both the Toro Rossos, I mean, you can't really blame the Toro Rossos, they didn't promise much. But then the Haas cars, I mean, they're getting to a point where it's getting serious.
Yeah, yeah, the Haas cars is they just have absolutely zero race pace. I mean, they talk about a lot of on the coverage. I think they're really struggling kind of with the tyres and just with the general package because there was something kind of fundamentally wrong with them during the race because a car which is able to put in a lap like Kevin Magnussen put in to qualify fifth, actually started 10th because of penalties, but to qualify fifth and Roman to kind of qualify just outside the top 10, it's but they've consistently just forced back so far in the race, and there's real kind of some kind of fundamental problem with the race pace at Haas and the way it kind of it uses its tyres and heats them up, or something in the car is seriously wrong there.
Yeah, I Gunther Steiner is angry right now.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not sure if they know how to fix it, to be honest, because I don't know where Haas kind of go from here. Because every weekend we say, oh, they had a poor weekend. Oh, don't worry though, they look good this weekend because look how they qualified, and they just it's not they don't just drop, they just absolutely fall off a cliff in the races. Like it's anything can happen. You can lose a few positions from where you start on the grid, but Kevin Magnussen went from qualifying in fifth to finishing behind a Williams and a considerable way
Oh,
behind the field.
oh, that's got hurt. No,
That's
like I think the problem fixing team for Haas right now is like looking at the interviews of both the drivers and watching them over the last couple of weeks. I think the problem fixing team of Haas right now is like the backbencher in a maths class who has no idea what he doesn't know.
that's true. That's true. I guess talk about Williams, the easy thing for Williams in the sense that they know that everything needs to improve. So whatever Williams do to their car is going to make it faster. Whereas I'm not sure Haas know where their areas improvement are.
But then, yeah, a really impressive performance by George. Yeah, an interesting, an interesting comment I came across on YouTube yesterday is George Russell. I mean, did you have a look at the way he impeded Kvyat yesterday?
Yeah, I did see the incident.
That could have been an airplane crash, literally.
Yeah, it could have been catastrophic. It really could have been. It was yeah, there was actually nothing you can say to George's defense there.
Yeah, no. So the comment was that George Russell, he qualified 19th, yeah, and then he receives a three-place grid penalty, and then he starts 18th.
Oh, I know. It's got
That can
rewarded for
really
it,
be
I think.
strange sometimes.
Oh, so I mean, it can be a funny old game qualifying. I think there's only like two cars that started where they qualified, so it was a
Yeah,
mad.
yeah, 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 indeed. Yeah, it was mad yesterday. I mean, one of the best qualifying sessions, followed by the best race. I mean, there's not really much you can ask for from one weekend, provided what we had last week.
Absolutely, and it was. I mean, there was battles everywhere, wasn't there? Can you talk about the Williams? We saw them. We even got to see them. The kind of the Hasses and the Toro Rossos and George Russell all kind of in a great battle together right at the start of the race. So,
Hmm.
and that's what Russell said. Russell said after the race, it was great to be involved in that little battle, even though it was just at the start. He says we're slowly going in the right direction. So that's obviously what we want to hear.
Yeah, and when Russell says we're slowly going there, I hope it's not as slow as the Williams car.
No.
No, so I really wanted to ask you, do you think so Danny Kvyat finished in 17th. Do you think it would have made a difference to his weekend had he not been impeded in Q1?
um. Hindsight's always 2020, isn't it? But
Yeah.
looking at it, probably not. 'Cause, I mean, we saw the way that Torres just didn't really seem to have any pace. He was impeded, but at the end of the day, how much further would he have qualified up on the results? Not really any further. I can't
Yeah.
see how he would have got any further up in Q2 if he'd have made it, and then certainly in the race, he would have dropped back. I mean, they didn't have anywhere near the pace of some of the other midfield runners, so it would have been. I'm sure it would have. I really think he would have finished in a similar position, regardless.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, looking at the pace that looking at the pace that the point scoring cars had, yeah, I have to agree with you. So coming to the only man on the grid who got lapped three times by Max Verstappen, the man who's back in form, where he has belonged pretty much all season, Robert Kubica in 20th place. Any comments about him?
Yeah, well, back where we expected him. A concerning thing I draw out from that. I mean, it's always a little bit difficult because obviously we never really see or hear anything of them. They couldn't just silently go along with issues and we haven't brought it to attention. But it's too much to now be a coincidence. Look at the best lap times. George Russell's best lap today was 1 minute 9 seconds point nine. Robert Kubica's was 1 minute 10 seconds point nine. So,
Wow.
as we've been saying all season, the Williams is only comparison to themselves, the only one that's really fair. And
Yeah.
Robert Kubica's best lap in this race was a full second slower than his teammate. That is
Yeah, I
that is
mean,
extremely, extremely worrying.
yeah, as I said in one of the previous episodes, that this is Russell and Kubica battle is kind of getting to that stage where it's like Verstappen and Gasly, but then it's only because this fighting for 19th and 20th, nobody really knows about it or cares about it.
Yeah, I think you're right. Because I feel like if this Williams car was, if we say they were like a genuine, if they were a genuine midfield runner, I think it would be the same thing. George Russell would be fighting the points, and you'd have, Robert Kubica kind of struggling at the back. I think Robert Kubica is lucky in the fact that, I think people are starting to notice it. But as you say, as you said a few times, it's not going to make headlines because at the end of the day, if Russell outpaces Robert Kubica by miles and gets a whole lap on him, it's still just going to be 90th and 20th, basically.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's sad, like when you think about it. Anyways, I mean, I really wanted to mention this that in the last episode we did promise to come with a preview for Austria, and then we didn't because Ben was busy. But then
no,
I am so glad we didn't because our predictions would have been nowhere.
absolutely. Yeah, I think it was. I don't think it's a race that you could have really predicted. Never could have said what would have unfolded. I'm absolutely glad it did. But yeah, to see Mercedes just off the pace, really, not really a factor in the race. The way that, Verstappen and Leclerc just absolutely smashed it in qualifying and the race. And even you couldn't even call the race result when the race started, could it? If I asked you on the second lap, who do you think is going to win this race? don't think you said Max Verstappen. You or anyone else would have said Max Verstappen. So
Nobody would have said Max Verstappen because he was P8 or P7.
absolutely. It's always good to see Max win as well because like he's so good for F1 as well. Because like when we go to races, we talk about kind of races and our how much support is everyone getting and how do we kind of attract new audiences and
Yeah.
Grand Prix dropping off the track because of lack of interest. But when you go to these European races and you see entire grandstands and more just completely in orange t-shirts, it's brilliant to see. And I see that they got what they wanted today, the Dutch fans. I
Yeah.
can't imagine what it's going to be like when we actually go back to Zandvoort as well.
Yeah. Next week. I mean, that's a topic for another day. But then, yeah, I mean, speaking about Max Verstappen winning this race, I mean, if we cut down to simply just driver performance, yeah, not taking car into account, I don't think there is anybody more deserving of a win this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Max had some absolutely great drives this season. For where the car's been. Most races this season, you can look at Max and you can say you can give him you can give him an A and say you got the best this car could have offered this weekend, and that's all you can really ask a really driver. When you look at him and say, look, did you get? Not everyone can win, not everyone's got a car that can, but if you can look at him and say you've done the best you can, and I think Max Verstappen is one of the drivers this season where you can look out pretty much every race and say, yeah, the answer to that question, did Max do the best he could, and it's yes. So yeah, absolutely, he does deserve a race win.
Yeah, and just to finish on this note, that in some corner of some part of the world, Fernando Alonso is twitching.
Fernando is extremely jealous, isn't he, of of these guys that are actually getting to race in a McLaren.
Yeah, I mean, the season that he decides to retire, this his arch nemesis when it comes to engines comes and wins a race.
Oh, Fernando, he's a great driver, but his career has been defined by poor timing, hasn't it? I do feel for the guy. You kind of like that's the way to kind of make sure your team is in an upward spiral. Your team gets rid of Fernando Alonso, and then up you go.
Yeah, I mean, speaking about Fernando Alonso, if somebody had told me in 2006 when he won a second championship that Fernando Alonso would retire with two world championships, nobody would have believed you.
I mean, we talked about it briefly earlier with the whole Ocon situation. There's a lot of political dealing in F1, and it's really difficult to get into the top seats. And Fernando is just a guy which has always found himself in the wrong team at the wrong time, isn't it? And that's another part of F1 that I really enjoy as well. It's all about manoeuvring and where you put yourself. And in the same way, Fernando's career's been defined by his choices. If Lewis Hamilton, when this mid-table team that really weren't showing any prospects confronted him and said, "Look, do you want to drive for us?" Lewis Hamilton could have said, "No, I'm happy with McLaren. I trust McLaren are going to pull through this." Lewis
Mhm.
Hamilton would be a one-time world champion right now.
Ah,
It's
yeah, yeah, true, very true.
That's what I mean. So it's fascinating how some drivers kind of find that sometimes drivers make the wrong call and sometimes drivers make the right one. So that's what we love it.
Yeah, and I mean, we've gone on for an awfully long time today, but then such was the intensity of the race that we had to do this.
But I think it deserves it.
Yeah, I mean, like last week or the week before last week, we were discussing that, like, if we talk about the race, like 35 to 40 minutes, it's supposed to be a good race. But then in this race, we could have talked about just the leader's performance for 30 minutes alone.
Absolutely, I think we really could have done. We've done well to not kind of keep you listening for like 2 hours.
Yeah, we could have, but then yeah, we decided to have some mercy. Yeah, so that was all from us, and we will be back soon with more F1 content. And yes, we might have some few surprises coming.
Yeah, yeah. Stay tuned and thank you for listening.